Kate, would you like to kick it off?
Yeah, I would just like to know the starting point for each of them. When you go into an organization, what is your start? What do you do first, Dick? What do you do first, Evelyn, in order to get to these issues?
Okay, it's different as an internal, it's different as an internal versus an external, and I've been both. But the bottom line is, if you don't establish trust and credibility within the first 30 seconds to 30 minutes of a conversation, it doesn't matter what your information is, because no one will listen to it. So you need to start where your client is, understand their concerns, both implicit and explicit. Because they may be saying, I have to meet these numbers, but their implicit concern is, if I don't, I'm going to get fired, or their implicit concern may be, if I want to get promoted to be CEO, and this is going to be my leverage point. So make sure you have trust and a common understanding about what the real issue is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We usually are asked in by a strategy team and not by HR. And our big issue initially is, are they really committed to do this stuff? And do they understand that strategy ought to drive metrics, metrics drive decision making, and make that investment? We also argue very strongly that workforce ought to be on the scorecard of the business and the scorecard of every manager. If you look at the Kaplan Norton stuff, they have innovation and learning, and if you look at every time they rewrite something, they rewrite what innovation and learning is. And there's a reason. Kind of humorous, but they had three things they loved, and they loved the idea of a balanced scorecard. But three things, financial, customer, and business process, didn't look balanced. So they were in the cosmic search for a fourth thing, and they came up with innovation and learning. So we think, and we get firms to agree, that on that scorecard for workforce, for leaders, it ought to have a culture element, it ought to have a strategic talent element, and it ought to have an element really about leader behavior and hold them accountable for those things. Some of you have seen some of that stuff, like with PepsiCo, starting with the 66-34 stuff, with 34% being on workforce, and 2 years ago they went to 50-50. IBM's going that direction, Novartis is going that direction, J&J, and so forth. So we're getting some real credibility about the workforce stuff. So for us, if we can't get that kind of agreement, like my wife says, Dick, you fired another customer. And that's exactly what we do, because we walk. Okay.
Anybody from the audience with a question? Yes, in the front row, please.
Before you walk them, how do you try to sell those metrics to the CEO?
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
Sure. Before you walk from the customer, how do you try to sell those metrics? How do you try to sell that velocity to CEO?
So the question was, I'm sorry, I got to repeat it for the back of the room. Before Dick walks from a client, how does he really try to sell the metrics to the client?
In all honesty, we don't work real hard to try to sell it, because we get invited in, they're kind of pre-sold. You've got somebody that really kind of knows and understands this. Maybe they want to bring about a cultural change. Often we get brought in, just like Evelyn does, around some turnover sort of circumstances, and they kind of know, they've read like our HBR article, A players for or A positions, stuff like that. So in many respects, it's not that difficult. The harder part is getting HR to try to sell for us to the team, and usually that doesn't always work real well. So that's a whole different kind of challenge.
Yes, in the middle.
Sure.
So the question was on the ability to pilot these sort of programs.
I think you're right on target. For those Dick is a renowned professional and can walk. Many of you in the room cannot walk, okay? Or you walk.
Tenure.
Yes, tenure. Many of us can walk right to the 5 o'clock club, right? So the question is, start with something small and that's going to have high impact. Small and high impact, and here's my implicit again, that's going to drive the business but not put anyone in a shame position.
So an example.
Okay? An example, customer satisfaction, okay? It's a good place to start. The service profit chain, you know, where you can show that having good customer service people, or I don't want to use the word engage, but good involved customer service people can create better value with the customers. It's a very good place to start. Talent, retention of talent. They work so hard to hire great people. Why are they leaving? Why are they leaving? That's a really important metric to start. Why are your high potentials, if you've identified them, leaving? How many? What percent? If many of them are leaving in the first year, you have a case for change, okay? Because you've just spent a lot of money hiring fantastic people, and they're coming in from the outside, and the metrics on this are known. I think it's something like 50% of people, senior level people, leave after 18 months, okay? So you're going to find turnover there. And the question then you can dig down into is why. Because you know something, it's going to tell you how to run your business better. If you're internally focused and it's a very inclusive, and it's a very kind of culture that's kind of removed from the world, and you bring in an externally focused person with a different point of view and they get killed in 6 months, that's data that you can use. And if you're killing all of them, that's very important data. So I think customer and turnover of high potentials.
Yeah, I think that those metrics are really great. I mean, yeah, if you're losing A players in A positions as a business leader, you got something to answer for. If you're losing C players in A positions, you probably ought to get rewarded. So, you know, you have to think about those things. I should tell you, we do pilots all the time. We do pilots around strategic workforce planning, which is kind of our entree to many, many organizations. We wouldn't go in and do HR metrics unless we kind of understood a lot of stuff about the strategy and had the support to do some things, because we're kind of tinkering with the organization and we need to understand that. Because just like Evelyn says, you know, organizations are systems perfectly designed to deliver what they're delivering now. When you begin to tinker with performance metrics, reward metrics, you're tinkering with things that people know how to win on and know how to cash in big time on. And you better make sure that all that's aligned to strategy and you've got the right kind of blessings to do those things. But even with strategic workforce planning, we often begin with pilots. At Boehringer Ingelheim, Lockheed Martin, Cypress Semiconductor, lots of different firms, we began with pilots. And one of the things that invariably happens is we have some business leader that thinks this is the greatest thing that ever happened. And they often get promoted. One of them got promoted to be the head of HR at Cypress Semiconductor. Real tough issue, but he's a software engineer. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows, and he's a smart ops guy, and he's driving this through the organization like nobody's business. And now at every ops meeting, we report out on all this stuff. In fact, we were going to report this stuff to the board, and our CEO, who is kind of a famous CEO, thought that he and the HR guy and I were going to present, and then the chairman or the CEO decided he was going to present this stuff to the board because he was going to take no answers for this thing. So I think pilots really help, and we've had a lot of people that have been part of our pilots that have been promoted up. At Boehringer Ingelheim, we now have somebody on the board because it's a European operating board that loves this stuff, that really shepherds this stuff. So taking that opportunity to have a real demonstration case is pretty important, but never pick the worst place to do this stuff to begin with. Pick somebody that really knows and understands what they're doing, somebody that's a credible leader, has the respect of the organization, can be a good spokesperson for all this stuff. So structure for success as you begin to think about a pilot.
And the next question is right there.
You talk a lot about metrics, but what about predictive analytics? Do you have any experience with using HR metrics and kind of those finance models that use for finance to have prediction of future outcomes? Do you have any experience with that in HR metrics?
The question was on predictive analytics in HR metrics.
Quick answer.
Well, my colleague Mark Hewson and I have a tremendous amount of evidence about does HR really matter and does it drive the bottom line. The short answer to that question is the HR system aligned, integrated, and differentiated? It will have a major impact upon market value per employee, sales per employee, and profit per employee. That work won many research awards. It's published in a lot of places, including SHRM some time ago. And I could talk to you about the curve, and I can talk to you about why best practices is a bad idea, because it drives more variance into systems than it takes out of it, so all those kind of things. But I think we're kind of out of time, but I'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Yes, unfortunately, that was our last question. I'm just going to turn it over to Kate to close.
Great. Are we ever lucky to have this brainy panel and Darren did just a great job as moderator and the job hunter reports? Just give it a round of applause for all three of them. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tough subject. There's so much to learn, so much to learn. But we'll see you, and next time we'll see you in September. And so look for your invitation. Hand in your blue sheets as you leave. Please hand in your blue sheets. Okay, thank you all for coming. And thanks to our panelists and to Darren.